people who are already deep in the crypto and Web3 and this topic of making the better world, I think the best way we can actually inviting others is asking the good question, rather than tell them what to do. So I think if we take maybe some time to think about what are the good questions for ourselves and then people around us and to the industry and to ecosystem and to nations and to the world, I think that will be very, very helpful and simple, conscious practice that we can do.
Welcome to The Regeneration Will Be Funded. My name is Matthew Monahan, and in this series, we're exploring the intersections of regenerative finance, technology, and our living planet. Created with Ma Earth, you can find all of our conversations and more at maearth.com. Thanks for joining us. Today's guest is Seung-Yi Lee, co-founder of Gatherings. Seung-Yi is an influential bridge builder between the East and the West, or as she likes to call it, the East and the rest. She's been in crypto a long time, and in this conversation, Seung-Yi shares her tips around facilitating events, how to approach the lifestyle of crypto, new experiments in investing and impact work enabled by Web3. Seung-Yi also vulnerably shares about a dark point in her career, what she learned about mental health and well-being, and how she tries to impart this wisdom for other entrepreneurs. I also asked Seung-Yi about gender balance or imbalance in crypto and how she thinks about that topic. This conversation was recorded in Mangaroa, Aotearoa, New Zealand in March 2023. On to the show with Seung-Yi Lee. Welcome. Today we're here with Seung-Yi Lee, co-founder of Impact Collective. Thanks for being here, Seung-Yi.
Thank you for having me, Maddie or Matthew.
How are you doing today?
Good. It's early morning. I mean, actually not so early. It's 8:45, but I'm good. I'm back in the land of New Zealand and having a good chat with my friend Maddie. So why not?
And you are organizing a Web3 gathering here at the moment, and you're also preparing for another Web3 gathering, which I'd love to hear more about, Soulbound. What is Soulbound?
Yeah, I mean, Soulbound, it came about just because of the name, Soulbound token.
So Soulbound being Seoul, Korea.
Yeah.
Or the pun on Soulbound.
Exactly.
Which is what Vitalik Buterin has brought back into the lexicon for a type of NFT.
Exactly. So last year they've been like group of DAO people gathering together, and in Germany and other places, and also in Denver for MCon and so on. And then we're like, we need a more event in Asia too. So what should we do? I'm like, okay, you come to Seoul. And then how do we call? We call it Soulbound. So that's how it come about. But now it has become more like a cultural workshop, and we're starting from Seoul. But simply one line tagline is like a gathering of DAO East and the rest. First, it was starting with the East and the West. But it's not always West and East. There is also other culture that exists in this beautiful world, and we want to include them all. But East being anchor of that conversation, and then the rest culture comes in. The reason why we put this together is because a lot of blockchain context is actually centralized into the Western context, and a lot of technologies and toolings and conversation are studied in English. So there's a lot of like Asian culture that has a huge language barrier just behind the oldest evolution. And not just that, but also when especially it comes to DAO, DeFi, NFT, all of things is led by technology, led by finance people, and led by some of like the rational theme and philosophy. So I get it, like, okay, this can be led by West, but Dao is actually, it's about community, it's about governing together, it's about communication, which East and the rest of the country actually had like so much longer history and knowledge about, but we are not utilizing enough in the DAO space and the crypto space. So this is going to be a very small gathering, 3 to 4 day gatherings. People comes from all around the world, just having a conversation as a starting point, you know. How can we bring more ancient wisdom and then meet the modern knowledge with people who are really not just like selfish minded, but more like a planetary mind come together, and then creating this event of connecting heart to heart first, and then, you know, expanding our knowledge about our cultures and differences, and then at the end, actually, we are creating a new narrative that is more inclusive and more diverse. So with that we can actually draw a picture of the new system that we want to create. Because if we want to, DAO is going to be creating a new system, and then this is like, you know, the new world that could not saving, but like actually replace a lot of like second system right now. And then we need a more diverse thing. You know, it can't be just led by West again, or it can be led by just one particular biased culture or context, right? So we can actually draw really inclusive structures and model and story and value and all of that. And I'm not sure if we can make it, but like, at least we try. Yeah.
It's beautiful. I mean, what I hear you saying is that so this East and Rest theme, rest being the rest of the world, you know, how this really centers the different Eastern cultures, which may not always be so visible in the crypto space of where a lot of these projects are originating and starting. And that lens is not just about including more people, it's actually about incorporating, integrating, you know, key pieces of knowledge and ancient practices that can help us inform this transformative new sets of technologies and organizing. Because if we are trying to change the systems, it would make sense that we would try to incorporate and integrate other ways of knowing and being. And that the way that you're organizing these events, in my experience of how you hold spaces, is like, yeah, it's very much starting with the heart, starting with, I've heard you refer to it as the humanware. Can you share more about that?
Yeah, so there is a lot of building technology, right? We need a hardware and we need a software, but we also need a humanware, or hardware, I call it, because technology eventually is actually built by a human, and then, or built for human, and then. But often a lot of crypto people are forgetting, we build all these amazing tools and let's go now to find people to use it. But it's like a wrong approach, you know. When you do startup, we always like learn, you have to listen to your audience, you have to listen to your client, you have to listen to your customer first. But oftentimes we are just too excited about those hardware and software, and then just put it out there and they're waiting for people to come. And that's like approach that is not really focusing on solving the problem. It's more like a sake of building more fancy technology, which I think is somewhat a waste of energy and time. So how can we actually really bring in more of like human where, and then what are the real problem that we want to solve here, and how the human actually using this technology, gonna use this technology, and then like bring the human factor into that space of building technology, and especially in crypto. Yeah, because I think imbalance of the conversation and importance that is highlighted in crypto space is really, really extreme. We don't really talk about the human side at all. And it's all about technology, all about money and number, all about chart. So how can we bring the humanware and the human element equally to that technology conversation, so we can really bring more cohesive conversation and dialogue to the table.
And yesterday, I participated in the opening session of this Web3 gathering that you're holding, and you opened with us all getting barefoot and walking into the gardens, and then sitting around in a circle and sharing a very what felt intimate and vulnerable, and many of us didn't know each other. Simple introductions where there was some context about what projects or what things that we're currently thinking about, But it really just started more with checking in, understanding our energy levels, where we're coming from, what we're bringing, and it was just such a nice, soft way to open the space. And I know I felt much more connected to the people to go deeper. I'm curious, what other facilitation techniques you've learned and what kinds of things that you're noticing and trying to bring into crypto conferences and what other organizers might be able to learn from some of those practices.
Yeah, often when we do event or conferences, it's again, we're going straight to the headspace. What are the venue? What are the time? Where's the money? And then at the end, we talk about the program. And that's why often the conferences has become very speaker focused, which is very passive. But we want to create a transformative experience for people. When you look at like those times that you've been to different events, what's really stick in you or stuck with you is not about the speaker talking. You can find them online on YouTube and everywhere.
Right.
But like really the human relationship and then the time that you spend together with this person and then the relationship that continues. Oh yeah, we met at the conference talking about this and that and that. And then especially in crypto, when you go to the ETHDember or other big event, in a very busy environment, people need to scan you very fast with a very tangible thing. What kind of project are you working on? But if you're not like helpful for me, it's very transactional. You just move on because there is 10,000 other people that you need to talk to and find out who is useful for me. So I host like one little DAO salon, we call like a co-living space in the ETHDember last year, and bring more people together. And then that opening session, I start with like, oh, where are you coming from? And we don't talk about projects or your role in the company purposely, but who are you, and what are the nature elements that you're connected to, and why are you here? And people already connected with a heart level. And then later you find out, oh, this person's working for this VC, or this person working for Coinbase, or like big names companies or projects, and you already become friends. So it's really hard to say no to those, like not to help these people, right? So that's how it creates the network of people and how it connects the people in the crypto, which it's not just simple. Crypto is very much, for me, is a lifestyle. And it's not just like one industry. And now AI is there. And then I'm moving on from crypto, Web3, and moving to AI. So to understand this complex ecosystem and network, you really have to anchor into some human element. Otherwise, it feels so empty. Yeah. So step back and look at your purpose and what is the best way to bring people's human experience into that conference. It can be very human level introduction, which works all the time. So that's one thing. And second thing is, what are the, not about number, not about like, oh, we need to have 500 people or 10,000 people. What are the most valuable conversation? And then what are the best form to bring the conversation? And what are the best outcome that we can have after this event? So think a little bit more holistically and then step back and then zoom out and then really focus on the purpose of the conference or the event. And then you will start to see, you know what, we can actually do this and that and that. And we might not have 1,000 people, but we can have 100 people that is really, really impactful for this crew. And then that might be more valuable for our sponsors as well. So that's what I'm using for Soulbound as well. It's not 1,000 people event, but we have 100 people that are really, really unique in the DAO space or community building space or community Web 3.0. It's not just DAO alone, but like people who really can bring a lot of different perspective. So it can benefit to DAO and the DAO can benefit to them. So it's just 100 highly creative people. So that way I think impact is higher than 10,000 people, in my opinion. So that's very much like a first stepping stone of conversation to have about the event strategy, not about like little tip and trick, but I don't know, hope it helps.
Yeah, I think it's a beautiful philosophy. And one thing I am enjoying about the crypto space is that there's these different cultural experiments that have nothing to do with the tools and technologies, but especially when you experience the in-person events, you're seeing the contours of new forms of culture emerge. And so you've been doing this for quite some time, and you've had this, incredible global experience. And so maybe can you share a bit about your history and journey into this field of work and some of the projects and adventures that you've had along the way?
Yeah. So funny enough, I studied social work, social welfare. I thought maybe I can contribute to the world and to other people around me by touching their life and then guiding them through conversations and counseling and stuff like that. And I looked at myself like, I am only 22, 23. I don't think I'm there to even touch other people's life with my consultations. So I quickly turned into my work into nonprofit fundraisings and working for humanitarian organizations and NGOs. And so I took a 1 year after graduation doing fundraising world tour. So go visit different small NGOs and help them fundraising a strategy, and then go to different field and really understand who are the people that I want to help. Even if I go to big organization, I need to know, otherwise I will be just desk worker, just doing some typing, copying stuff, handing over to somebody that I don't even know and I don't have any connection to. So that travel got me into a lot of different cultural experiences, and I got to meet a lot of amazing humans, and that kind of built me up to understanding the world in a very different way. And when I was sent to West Africa, Mali, then working in a humanitarian organization, they didn't have any way to send and receive money. So they have to do money transfer, putting in a plastic bag from one country to the other country, and they would deliver to that village because people didn't have any ID, no bank account, nothing that could actually use any of services that exist. But they had this feature phone, and that's the only tool that can communicate with the other side of the world. And they don't even speak a language. They don't know how to read, but they had a special code to type and communicate. So I was really blown away with that somewhat technology and human technology that they were using, and the cultural background, and then societal background. And I came back to Korea. Wow, this is bugging me for 2 weeks. I've seen worse, but that particular story just stuck with me, and I got to do something. And back then I was already know about Bitcoin. They were my ex-partner working on blockchain stuff and mining Bitcoin, and there were no Ethereum time. So we built this SMS wallet so people can send and receive Bitcoin on the text message. And that's how I got into tech space more. And then that project kicked off, and we moved to Silicon Valley and then become a startup tech entrepreneurs and so on, so on. The rest is in the history. Then I worked in a DID, which is Decentralized Identity Protocol in Korea, that now used by 1 million people. And then after that, because of my nature of interested in human and culture and helping others and bringing more new narrative and new perspective to something that is very mundane, that led me into the DAO space. And, as you know, even before DAO, we had Nspiral, another network of these people, decentralized practitioners doing something together. And I joined Nspiral, and then that kind of get me more into decentralized organizations and practices and so on. And now I'm kind of merging all this experience that I had from impact work and then startup work, and then investment work, and then DAO work, community work, governance work. So I'm incubating few projects with my missions, and then just knowledge that I know.
Yeah, one of those projects is Impact Collective.
Correct.
Can you share a bit more about that?
Yeah, so Impact Collective is another interesting project that we've been experiment. So experiment is what I'm doing basically. This is basically community-driven accelerating program and investment program. It came about, I think, 2019. We sit down with some VC friends and builder friends, and I'm more become an impact person, a Web3 person. And how can we invest differently? What are our next investment thesis? And I think just few people in the room deciding who gets money is not enough. And we have so much bigger world than where we are focusing on right now. But how can we bring more knowledge and then the market senses from different people, and then do more experiment and bringing impact lens into it. And we have now Web3 technology that we can facilitate this decentralized movement. So we built this program called Impact Collective, pretty much collecting impact from all around the world. Let community decide. So we invite community, not just like founders and funder, but people who contributing to the success of the startups, and include them as a community and give them a power to actually due diligence, selecting the investment money receiver, and then also give them feedback, and then contributing into the community so they get to do like a lot of office hour between different people, connecting to the partner. So imagine this community of startup ecosystem comes together and then invest together, and then also participating in an investment decision. And then we give a token to these people to vote, but we also give token to teams that are receiving investment, potential investment, and then they give away this thanks token, appreciation token, to people who has helped them. And oftentimes, we think the 1 hour of investor time is more valuable than 1 hour of student who using your product, but we don't actually give them those high engineering and criteria. Oh, you have to give a 1 token for 1 hour of investor. You just do whatever you want. If this student was more valuable, then you give them 5. An investor who has a high profile but didn't really help you, then you give them 1. So in that case, everybody in the community who contribute get this appreciation token. Then later, our fund carry actually going back to these people who actually helped, and then holding the thanks token. So that way, we are all mission aligned, and then our incentive aligned to that startup success and the community success. So that's what we've been doing for the last 2 years. And it's not like a Web3 startup only. So we got to find amazing startups in Pakistan, which we would never, ever have access to those deals, And they also, because they are run by 2 moms, it's a telemedicine company, they are not the number one kind of like interesting deal for local investors. So they never actually had an international investor, but now because Impact Collective invests in them, they get more highlighted in their own Pakistan culture, which is very much men and women divided, and then we're not supporting, and also
Wow. Okay. So Impact Collective is really, what I'm hearing you say is that it's a different approach to the decision making around somewhat traditional investing, venture and angel type of investing. You're looking at the kind of impact space, which, impact investing, social enterprises, this kind of field, really looking at projects that are having a social or public good of some sort. But that rather than investors getting pitch decks, making all the decisions, what you're really doing is rewiring that decision making into more of a communally held responsibility that it's interesting because, the argument could be, well, is that going to be more effective at resource allocation? And I'm guessing that that's still an unanswered question. But when I think about my own experience in traditional Silicon Valley, where, the game was, how can you write the best pitch deck, convince the investors, and that was the optimization equation. This anchors the incentive completely differently, which is, how do I build a community around my idea? How do I get a lot of diverse stakeholders excited about it? And, once you actually go get the money from an investor, now you got to go do those things anyway, right? Whereas this is actually a more natural onboarding into finding product market fit and building customer relationships and recruiting team members and having good advisors. And then you've layered on this thanks token so that some of the value accrual, which would traditionally be only captured by the investors, is now shared with the community in a decentralized way based on merit, based on real value appreciation and what people have found to be useful in the ecosystem. So it's fascinating. I mean, you're layering a lot of different experiments in one. Did I get that roughly correct?
Yeah, it's not roughly. It's exactly correct. And there are a few points so we're now talking about like impact investment or impact startups. And I think, in our opinion, the segment between we are money making startup and we are impact making startup it shouldn't be existing anymore. So we are not just focusing on social enterprise or impact startup alone, although we have a name and impact very obviously. We bring that together, and so there is a lot of startup that we headed in the program that are really doing amazing work, but they don't even notice they are actually making impact. So we bring them in, and then kind of let them guide, like, hey, these are actually the impact that you're making. Have you noticed? So they can actually incorporate those impact narrative into their pitch deck or their pitch to the customer, to the investor. Since their ESG has become such a big deal and there's a lot of money flowing into it, it's also benefit them. Yeah, and then also teams who are doing amazing impact work and following and tracking their impact, they often just doesn't have like a business model or a strong business model or strong business angle into that business. So they come in and then they kind of also meet these traditional business people, and then they get to actually work on their pitch on the business side. And these two teams are meeting together, and they're like, wow, this is amazing what you do. And then they learn each other, they're building partnership. And then some team not even getting investment because we cannot give money to everybody for the first two, but version 3 that we're gonna actually have a evolution now, we can give money to everybody, whoever wants to get and then receive. We can talk about it another time. But yeah, so there was like another like human layer has been like folded into it. So a lot of at the core too, people were not just joining the program because they want money, but they want to really connect with their regional peers. So, hey, I'm doing this work in Korea. I want to meet somebody who's doing similar work in Thailand. Is there anybody? So they get to know each other. So that has become a really beautiful community of like founders, investors, and mentors, and people who can contribute a lot. And the students who are learning about startup, job placement has happened. So there is a lot of like other side effect which we wanted to see. And then also the investment side, the Pakistan company we invest, they are actually outperforming all the companies that are in the Northeast Asia, and sometimes Silicon Valley investors, the investee that we actually invested in as a fund in the previous time. So we now see, wow, actually the diverse and the collective intelligence working, and the people are now have a lot of information that we all have. The information gap has reduced, and now people actually know what is actually beneficial for them. So there is like something really big and beautiful happening. So version 3, we wanted to make it open, not just working with one fund, but working with anyone, either fund or institutional fund or angel investor comes in, and we just do very basic filtering, and the community still do due diligence, but it's not like our fund is investing. Anyone you met there, you can invest. And then all those deals become a sub-DAO of Impact Collective DAO. So it's become like an AngelList syndicate meet the Web3 community for impact. So that's kind of like tagline. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I love that. So you're opening up the investors will be able to come from anywhere rather than just the Impact Collective Fund.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seems on that point that you made about the definition of impact investing or projects that may not already have that frame but are making an impact. I mean, to me, it's like we're we're a generation of entrepreneurs who are going through this consciousness shift where we're trying to make positive good fundamentally more aligned in the economic system and ultimately more successful and profitable, so to speak, because that the culture that it is enabling and upholding these projects is reinforcing. And so using these mimetic terms like public goods or impact is just a way to continue to the waves to be lapsing onto the shore of making this the North Star for how we are motivated to build projects.
Exactly.
And so I'm curious, the counter argument is often that the incentive structure of VC and angel investment is just fundamentally flawed because it commands, 1 out of 10 of these works. And so you have to do tremendous value capture of a couple key companies and the rest kind of fold down. And ultimately this kind of perpetual unlimited returns model can lead to all sorts of perverse incentives 10, 15, 20 years down the future. Curious how you're balancing those tensions or how you're thinking about that.
But ultimately, for a company to success, you have to find a user. People has to use it. Yeah. And now I see even our users and consumers are more consciously aware. And a lot of narrative shift has happened, in my opinion, especially more advanced, like economically advanced countries and nations and then continents. And also now we start to see the collapse of the normal capitalism and then the normal framework and normal way of what is normal now. We're so confused. And a lot of people that I'm talking to, they're all like, I don't know what is North Star anymore. The traditional financial system that we believe even last week, everything is collapsing. What is that? So now people are the younger generation, which is gonna be our future user base, and they are the one that we have to target. And they're already talking about like value, ESG, and without impact, if it's the same cup, they're gonna buy a product that has a story coming from the value and a community. People are like-minded people. They are not buying the same cup that has no story, just cheaper. So people are willing to pay more for those stories and value. And I think it has already proven in the market. And so we have to see in a different way, okay, well, we can keep pushing our founders and our product to go higher, and then there's no limit. You just keep growing, and that's what we want to see. But investor will actually left alone, lonely, speaking that at the end. And also founders' well-being. I've met a lot of founders, they just collapse. And then even if they have this much success, if they collapse, what matter? Their family, their company all broke, and they really hurt by that. And then they are no longer motivated to work on the product. So we have to really think holistically again, step out, zoom out. And how can we actually make it sustainable and then a sustainable ecosystem? And that's gotta be the question. And right now we are, I think, in a very borderline between those tension, or what is the right thing, what is the bad thing. But I think there is a lot of more company, that even Patagonia, how they actually come out of it and then how they do and things like that. And they still respect it. They're still making huge success in business and they're still doing good thing. And I think more company will come out like that way. And there's a huge B Corp movement happening. And there's a lot of narrative shifting to this more, hey guys, sustainability, not just sustainable, but regenerating. It's not going to the zero, but we have to go evolve. And then that narrative has already implemented and then spreading like a virus.
A good virus, I hope. And so that dovetails nicely into another hat you wear in this space, which is Seong-Yi, who espouses the value of well-being and taking care of each other and the entrepreneurs. And can you share with me more about that part of your journey?
Wow, yeah, that's another big topic. I was that founder.
Yep, guilty as well.
Yeah, and I'm like, man, this is Silicon Valley, Korean born, English as a second language, never left the country till 19. And now I'm in the Silicon Valley, tech startup CEO, doing blockchain. Wow, fancy. How proud my parents will be, although they didn't understand whatever I do. and then I was like, okay, now I have to make it. I have to make it. I have to make it. And I just pushed myself a lot. And we all lived together in one house, and it's like sleeping 4 hours, like work every morning with the phone, and like, okay, working. And I was talking with like a 300 like investor to get like 30 people excited. That's like a normal startup life, and that's how it should be, and that's how it is. That's how you success. And all of a sudden I'm like, hey, co-founders, I'm not happy, and I feel so empty. And then I don't know if I can go on. And our other co-founder, which was my ex-partner, which I respect so much, but he's like, hey, right now is not the time for us to talk about happiness. We have to make this thing alive. What is this thing? And then that got me big hit, I'm like, what does that even mean? I'm not even happy. I don't feel healthy at all. I don't know what meaning of life is. Because I was already identifying myself to the product so much. It was woven in it. It was me. And people giving me that feedback about product, it hurts me. And I know a lot of founders in that space. So now I'm like, you guys have to actually really separate yourself and the product. And that's your baby, but that's not you. And that conversation got me into it. And then that got me into a huge fight with my other co-founder and my ex-partner. And that got me into really, really dark space, and like leaving the company, going down in the deep, deep, deep dark tunnel, and a lot of personal story that I can't reveal here. But yeah, those got me into really dark tunnel. And I didn't know what to do. And I had to start from the beginning by breathing. And then meditation helped me. And one of my mentor told me like, hey, Songyi, just close your eyes, breathe for 5 minutes, and then come back to me. And that was the day that I couldn't sleep and eat and do anything, 24 hours awake. Was the day after that I left our office. And I breathed for 5 minutes, and I'm like, interesting. Now I have a little bit more life force that I could go on and at least have a power to buy flower for myself. So I did that. 7-Eleven in Thailand, there's an old grandma selling flowers for the temples, and I bought one and I put it in front of my bed and fell asleep. And I was like, wow, breathing. I don't even remember when I was last time actually noticing breathing. And then they got me into the meditation. They got me into this deep journey of taking care of myself, and then go and refinding my happiness. And that has helped me. And so 2016, 17, I created a program called Zentrepreneur. So entrepreneur, but with a Z in the front, at the front. Zenpreneur, yeah. Mindful entrepreneur. You don't have to change everything. Same, but different. You just have to take care of yourself, and the meditation actually give you those tools to use. It's not religious or all alone spiritual, but it's very much science-based, and you can utilize this tool to make yourself better, your company better, and your life better. So that's kind of like my entry point of that well-being and founders and well-beings and all those topics. And obviously that got me into the spiritual journey of really connecting with a deeper meaning, and then nature, and, and through that, the wisdom that has been around for many, many, many years, even before us and before human. And then our indigenous wisdom that is actually reflecting the nature's pattern and wisdom. And how can we bring that into the tech and then the community that I'm working on. So that is kind of like all the pyramid kind of actions that I've been doing. Yeah.
And how do we bring all of these different modalities, wisdoms, tools, practices, without necessarily being specifically dogmatic or ideological, but really sharing the information and the practices and the experiences with one another, while we're building these tools and, rewiring so much of our digital and global coordination economy.
Correct. Yeah. So these story that I just shared about nature patterns and all these things, for some people, it's like wishy-washy. They don't really get it because they're not really connected with the nature yet or connected with that sense. So we love use cases. So always need this bridge use cases that connects that wisdom with your experience that you actually live and live in you. So I'm using this kind of form of decentralizing finance that we're using in Korea, which was introduced like hundreds of years ago. And people putting money together, they have community treasury, and then they either lend it to other people and then they use it. And this is what we do in DAO, right? And then that exact same patterns that exist in Africa and other different like culture that has those ancient wisdom alive still. They don't even notice that is coming from our ancestor, but because it's so into their life and it's so into our culture. So when we name those things and then reframe it, hey, where is this coming from? Let's go deeper into the history. Why our ancestors using this technology for what? And that actually connects to those wisdom. And then talking about, hey, now look at this practices that people have been using for thousands of years, and like how can we actually utilizing technology to make this beautiful practices better? And people start to connect their ideas and okay, now we have, let's say, billions of people using this type of decentralizing banking in Africa and Asia. Our pretty much heady Web3 people could come and like, that's our billion user base. How can we serve these people? And that's how it kind of surface level connects. But through those explanation of why this technology exists and the cultural background and how people using, people can also learn about, interesting, why are they having that, which we don't have? What is the thing that we have but they don't have? So keep bridging those two different cultural backgrounds and society background, mechanism background, all that is very, how can I say? It's not subtle, but how was the word? Delegate process of bringing that conversation together. But once we can do that with the one cases, people will quickly learn and then continue that. So I think now I'm in a process creating that first conversation of many will come. It's not from me, but I was the first one and people would just take it and then do it whatever they wanted. Yeah.
I see. So this is what you mean when you say kind of cultural exchange workshops and ancient futures. And, my experience as someone who comes from the United States and then lives in New Zealand is like that there's such this huge divide between East and West.
Exactly.
And it's so dangerous. It's like what you're doing to me also feels like peace building work because we need to understand one another in fundamental ways and rebuild relationships and understand each other's cultures and practices between these different, huge global divides. And so, yeah, I'm excited that the tools of Web3 give us new mechanisms for just making that facilitation more possible and easier.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the issue or challenge they have it in this normal community, they never had tools to incentivize people because they didn't have tools to capitalizing the contribution. And these are the parts that also technology, either Web3 or Web2, can provide, kind of like building really fun, either gaming theory, utilizing gaming theory or community or governance theory, engineering, new frame of like, how can we actually capture each other's contributions and values and exchanges and they incentivize that? Often in the community setup, someone is keep giving, someone is keep receiving, and people getting tired of giving. and then that kind of collapse, that creates conflict. And because community is created because of their interests and then human connection first, they often doesn't even have a way to opt out, or conflict resolution is something they don't want to talk about. So they are not building that agreement at the beginning. But there's a lot of like those kind of tactic. You can actually improve the community's longevities and well-being. And now finally with Web3 and then DAOs and a lot of like governance conversation we never had before coming up, and we can actually help those normal like a community that exists for a long time equipped with the right tools, and then so they can actually do the real meaningful community building and so on. So there's a lot of benefit and giving and receiving between this normal community and mundane community with the technology space, but the bridge hasn't been formed yet. So I'm super excited when that meets, and when the more people are come as ally, what kind of impact we can create, right, out of this.
Yeah, it's a theme that's come out in some of the interviews so far. Zach Anderson from Coordinate, Austin Wade Smith from Regen Foundation, this idea of making contributions more visible. Often the value has always been there, but now we have tooling to help create legibility and visibility to these different contributions, that may not have otherwise been so visible to the system of value exchange. I want to shift into another question that I think is somewhat of an elephant in the room in crypto, and that's around gender. You have been in this space for a long time, and I've seen you in rooms that are just absolutely, you're outnumbered 10-1 by men. And I'm so curious, like, what is your experience? How are you feeling this? How are you seeing this? And what is ours to collectively do to bring more inclusivity and balance into these spaces?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my work is very, let's say, feminine. It's not because I'm a woman, but the work, the lens that I'm using, and stepping back, zoom out, see the forest, and then seeing invisible things and feel invisible thing, and try to connect those work, which is very delicate and subtle and not so visible, the work itself. I think it's very feminine energy to take care of the well-being of the whole ecosystem. And we need more of that. So there's a lot of space for woman or not woman who has a feminine energy to come in to contribute. So I'm more hopeful than not hopeful. Of course, I'm from the beginning on, like when I joined when I created this company, joined the Silicon Valley Accelerator, I'm the only woman in the whole room and only one Asian, oftentimes in the group. I never felt that I was discriminated because I'm woman or Asian. And maybe it's thanks to my parents to raising me with such a big, high confidence. Well, I don't know. But I was like, I didn't really care about who I am, like what I look like. Yeah. But yeah, being a woman is maybe I should think more about the gender topic, actually. Yeah. Because I don't really see this as a bad thing, I always see things very optimistically. Okay, there's not enough women, then there is more opportunity for a woman to come in. And how can we come in? We just show up. We just speak up, and we actually supporting each other, and not as a woman, but we name it. And then people who has a more power in the space has influence. For example, myself, when I see there's a whole conference only with the men, I just talk to organizer. What happened? Is there any space for women? Or are you not, like, what are the value that you, is it woman because woman is not there because we are women? Or is it our topic is not relevant? Or what is it? Or can you create a space for us? And that's my work, like doing that. And a lot of my work, actually, all this initiative that I'm doing, we have 100% woman leadership, actually. So we need more men. So Impact Collective, we're like, I think we need more diversity. We need a man from South Asia. Who can we invite? We need a man from Korea. Who can we invite? And things like that. So for me, it was just amazing work experience in Web3, just being woman, working with a woman. It wasn't that we discriminated men, but it just happened to be more woman-driven thing. So I don't see any limitation why woman cannot come in unless it's our awareness of self and awareness of men's or masculine energy, don't see the value of feminine energy. But if we start to see that and we start to name it, then I think people are willing to bring those two energy equally together. Yeah, because right now we just don't see each other's value. We only talk about gender. You're a man, it's bad. You're a woman, you're feminist, it's bad. No, it's not, guys. Let's go deep into it. Why are we talking about gender at all? And what are underneath? What are the value creation that we need to do to bring in more feminine energy and masculine energy? Let's transform the conversation into those two different segments of character rather than the gender. And that person being man is nothing to do with their femininity or masculinity. Everybody has those two things. It's all about balancing. So how can we bring more balance into the space? That's how we have to look at it. And I know there's a lot of noises. Either I consciously avoid or unconsciously avoid. I'm not really getting into that gender space, but I'm here to speak up when I see the discriminations or imbalance and just name it with my feminine energy as well. Not like judging, like, hey, this is wrong or something, but like asking the question. Oh, I found this. There's only men's in the table. Is there any reason why only them? Or is there any woman who can speak in the same level and the same knowledge and the same experience? Oh, then let's put the woman in. And that's quite understandable these days, and there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I love the nuanced ways that you're thinking about it. And I mean, you're such a weaver between worlds, a bridge. The Web3 community is very lucky to have you between East and the West, between genders and cultures, and all the different projects and hats you're wearing and organizing and experiments that are going to inform the use cases and case studies of the future of new ways of organizing, new ways of doing business, new ways of building communities. So I think that, it's a tremendous gift to the space. Are there any other messages that you want to leave us with, or any other topics or questions I didn't ask that you'd like to share?
There's so much in my head at this moment because I think I keep bringing out what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, how I feel and stuff. There's a lot to be done in this world, and especially in Web3. And as I stated at the beginning of our interview, Web3 and blockchain isn't just technology, isn't just money. It is more like a lifestyle for me. So I sometimes go back, like, what would Jesus say? Or what would Jesus do? But what would decentralization would do? What would Vitalik do? But like, just thinking about our mundane, either themes or, just traditional values or traditional way of thinking in me and outside of me, just bringing that questions like, oh, is this really the best way we can do? Yeah. What are the better way we can achieve our goal, creating more impact, and just asking that question. And also people who are already deep in the crypto and Web3 and this topic of making the better world, I think the best way we can actually inviting others is asking the good question. Yeah, rather than tell them what to do. Yeah, so I think if we take maybe some time to think about what are the good questions for ourselves and then people around us and to the industry and to ecosystem and to nations, and to the world, I think that would be very, very helpful and simple, conscious practice that we can do.
What a wonderful note to end on. Thank you so much, Seung-Yi, for spending your time with us.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
You can find links to Seung-Yi's diverse array of projects in the show notes below. For more conversations like this one, go to maearth.com. Please like, share, subscribe, and you're also invited to join our community Discord. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.